This week, the founder of Kitchenware Records, Keith Armstrong. This is Anyone Can Play Guitar, the podcast for musicians and music lovers that takes you behind the scenes of the music industry. This week is brought to you in partnership with guitar rigs from MGR Music. Ever wondered what equipment your favourite guitarists use? Head over to mgrmusic.com/guitar rigs now with detailed pedal diagrams, amplifier and guitar combinations that defined an era. Whether it's Kurt Cobain's 1991 setup or Alex Turner's from 2006, mgrmusic.com/guitar rigs is the place to go. Welcome to episode 79. It's with me, James, and it's with him,
Ben.
Record labels.
Yes, this is, we've spoke to a few people about releasing records and having independent record labels. This is probably the first time we've spoken to someone who's released major albums. Before we get into that, James, he has a snippet from last week's episode in Kev Brown of Gig Rev.
I've noticed in the last 12 months that people are starting to say, okay, well, it's over with Facebook. It's not working. Okay, it's Instagram now.
So
it gives a good balanced view in terms of what a record label or a record company actually is.
Yeah,
which I quite liked in his view, what the purpose ought to be of one of those, and why an artist might want to use one or not. Well, so now really good to get that sort of perspective. That they're not always the big bad people who just take artists for a ride.
That's true.
The good ones provide
that's very true.
A good service.
Yes. I spent a Monday afternoon lunchtime with Keith before we went to boxing training.
Boxing?
I think it was boxing or mixed martial arts. Something combative. At the Bacchus, where you and I and a few of our pals go before the match on a match day. Coincidentally, who knew?
Yeah.
So it was very surreal being in the Bacchus on a Monday afternoon when it was very quiet.
I can imagine it was quiet.
And you could hear the music. Not just like the hubbub of a match day.
You normally only hear the music when you go to the
toilet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's normally Bombay Bicycle Club or Kings of Leon.
Is that right?
Well, it was for the longest time, but now with I think whoever used to be a big Bombay Bicycle Club fan has left because I haven't heard them for a while there.
Stone Roses used to get a big look.
Did, yes. Yeah, I mean, we're talking down the line Route 1 match day music, but hey, if it works, it works. Anyway, I'm getting way off topic there. Yeah. So thank you to Keith for spending some time before he went to do what he had to do, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Remember, a great way to support the show is to go on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and a review. It really does make a massive difference for the show. Now, on with the episode.
So Kitchenware Records came from a group of people that were called the Soul Kitchen. So when we first started out, me and a whole bunch of friends decided we decided to start a club to put on acts that we liked, that we wanted to see, because nobody would promote them in Newcastle.
Yeah.
And we had a list, and it was people like The Fall and Aztec Camera and the Fire Engines and New Order, all the sort of bands around, and that, more like alternative 80s sort of bands that we really wanted to see.
Yeah.
And nobody would put them on. So we started a club up called the Soul Kitchen, and kind of loosely using what we thought was from living in Newcastle and looking at New York.
Right, okay. Yeah.
What we thought Andy Warhol's like factory would be.
Yeah.
We thought of applied it to that. So we had friends that were, and you have to remember, we were all kind of either students or just starting out. So we were all in our like sort of late teens, early 20s when we started doing this. Mm-hmm. And some people were like at college doing fashion. There was like filmmakers, there was photographers. There was me and my two close friends, Phil and Paul, involved in music. Mm-hmm. And Paul and I used to be in a band together when we were kids and stuff. And so we put this collective together, and we called it the Soul Kitchen. And the idea was that anybody that made anything, we would call it kitchenware.
Okay.
So if it was a record, it was
okay.
kitchenware. If it was a shirt, it was kitchenware. If it was a film, it was kitchenware.
Right.
So that's kind of where it starts. So we've always been called the Soul Kitchen. So and then following from the club, we started the label, and then from the label went into management, and kind of just by default and necessity, really. So and then ended up became like Kitchenware became one of the first dependent record labels.
Okay.
It's like much that we wanted to stay independent, we couldn't fund it, so we had to do deals with majors.
Yeah.
And we concocted a way of doing it where we would still retain all the creative control of everything.
Right.
But we would sell our business to them, really.
Okay.
And what that did years later, and I can't stress enough how young we were when we started and didn't have a clue. So we were just making it all up. And our peers were people that were a bit older, a bit more experienced than us, people that ran Factory and Mute and all these kind of labels.
Yeah.
And at the time it was like a heyday for independent record labels.
Yeah.
And everybody used to help everybody else out. We got a lot of advice and help from Factory. And from Postcard. We in turn helped Alan McGee when he was setting up Creation. And everybody used to like talk to each other, help each other, meet at gigs, meet in bars, exchange notes, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But when I look back on it, if we'd had the savvy and everybody's got a kind of story when they start off in the music, they didn't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
If we'd had the savvy, we might have built a company like a Mute that, on one hand you've got like something like Mute that's sold for like millions, and then you've got another company like Factory that just went totally bust, and all the deals were done on like, handshakes and
well, literally
blood brothers and all that sort of stuff. And I guess we were sort of somewhere in between that.
Okay.
Now, I wouldn't say we, obviously not quite successful as those companies, but we were working on the same sort of model, really. And then so the overall company's always been Soul Kitchen, and where it is now, it's kind of gone from being an indie label to being a management company to being a publishing company and developing people through publishing and all that. And now where it is now, I'm a manager and a publisher, but we're also right now trying to enable younger kids to do the same thing again. Okay. So we I met quite a few young kids through the Gateshead Music Academy, and then I used to always be skeptical about music colleges, because I didn't think you could teach. I thought it was something you had to do yourself. You couldn't really teach people. But as I've seen more and more, they've got better and better, I think, over the years. And so now we're working with people from Lipper in Liverpool, BIM in Manchester, and the Gateshead Music Academy, and not just artists, but kids that have like want to get into music, business management and all that kind of stuff. So we're trying to enable people to do that at the moment. So there's like, right now there's a kind of, I manage Jake Bugg.
Right.
That's sort of like that's my day job, if you like.
Yeah.
Along with my partner Jason Hart, business partner. So we manage Jake Bugg, but I also still manage the Lighthouse Family, and I've just put a deal together for them again after 18 years, because the record company wanted them to come and start again. I've always managed Prefab Sprout, and I still do. We're reissuing their whole catalogue through Sony. So I'm still doing the things that I used to do, and things like more current things. But the thing that I'm also passionate about at the moment is trying to bring new acts together. So we've developed this kind of roster of acts of like, it's a group called San Junipero, which is half Newcastle, half Nottingham.
Right.
Jason lives in Nottingham, I live in Newcastle.
Jake's from Nottingham as well.
Jake's from Nottingham, yeah. So, and then a girl called Kay Grayson, who's a rapper from the West End, Newcastle. A guy called Sweet, who's at BIM in Manchester, but originally from Newcastle, is another young rapper. And they make music where rap, and it's kind of different from how it started out. It's kind of moved on, and it's more about, it's more a crossover influences and ideas that go in. It's more musical in a lot of ways than it used to be, I think. And a band called Drive, who are from Newcastle. So we're kind of helping enable all those acts at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So and through that, like I say, we're sort of bringing in other kids that have done music business courses. I just have an interest in music.
Yeah.
I'm just keen to get started and haven't got a clue where to start.
Yeah.
And trying to help give them a bit of our experience and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
To have do something new.
Yeah. Well, this is what the podcast is all about. Yeah. It's primarily looking back at James and I when we were just starting out in 2003. And going, this is what you should do, or this is what you should do, or this is what you could maybe do, and so that kind of links really nicely. So one of the first things I want to talk about is the record company and management company. For anyone who's listening who hears these terms, what is a record company? What should a record company do?
Well, it's kind of changed a lot, and it's especially changed in the last few years. I'm not even sure that a major record company is a kind of a huge machine that can take somebody from their kind of, and in this way it hasn't changed that much, from the sort of aspirations and dreams and things they do when they start out and doing demos and now you can post and publish yourself quite easily. You can put your own music out to on Spotify and Apple Music and all that stuff. You can use SoundCloud. There's loads of platforms you can use to get your music out there. And what they'll do is they'll take somebody who's managed to get some kind of a following naturally and then take it to the next level. But it's a music business. So a record company is in the music business and they're making money out of it. So it's not very. They're not really that well disposed to art. It's like a bit more commerce than art.
Yeah.
It's supposed to always be a mixture of both, but it depends how arty you're going to be, So, and I think if you're a musician, you kind of have to be a bit realistic about that, So, if you were like John Coltrane or Throbbing Gristle or something, as opposed to Lewis Capaldi or Jake Bugg, it's a different. You've got a different set of things, but record companies are just basically there to take music and sell to people in the most effective way and make money and sell your records around the world and all the rest of it. What used to be a record label, they don't exist in the independent way as much as they used to, but they do in other ways. I think as people get together and help each other put music out, not quite in an old way. I think dance music still does it a bit more independently. There are some pretty healthy independent labels still around, like ourselves and Glassnote and people like that are trying to develop artists. So our thing is about artist development. Record companies, big record companies like Sony and Universal are more about trying to sell records around the world, really. And and this has always been the case. And I think for most people starting out and they want to know what do they do to get started, do they have to have, it used to be you had to have a record deal, you had to have somebody that would help you get your song made onto a record or whatever and get it out to people and get it distributed and all that. And it was an absolute minefield. I mean, it took me years to figure it out, to be honest. And I worked in a record shop, so I had a head start. But now I think you can, people can self-publish, and it's a lot easier than it used to be. But there's a big onus on using social media to promote your music. So you're always going to have that kind of slight skew between some people aren't comfortable doing that. They're just comfortable being musicians. And the self-promotion aspect of it is not always natural to them. And and I can completely understand that. So where a record label now I think would come into being is somebody that could help you make right decisions about your music in the first place, because you don't always know. So one of my jobs is I'm an A&R man, so you give me all your songs and I'd listen to them and say, well, that one's better than, now I've got a feel of what you're trying to do. I would say that this one's stronger than that one and maybe you should concentrate on that, help you pick the right songs, because you might not know, you might just have a ton of songs.
Yeah, there's also that sort of like emotional attachment to some songs, isn't there? Like this
yeah.
is the first song you wrote, which actually might be just garbage.
And also, a lot of people treat their songs like kids. Like, the sort of little ugly one, they want to protect that one more than the one that's like striding forth and on the football team. So like, that's just human nature.
Yeah. And
I've never met a songwriter yet that doesn't do that. So you kind of help sort that aspect out for them. And then you've got to kind of say, well, this one's got a better chance of being, I don't know, catching people's attention than another one maybe. So you bring in advice. So a record label can help you do that. Record labels also, I mean, we work with a company called Cobalt, who are quite progressive in the way that they help people self-publish through AWOL. It's called Artists Without a Label.
Yeah.
But then when something starts to go, they'll help give them some marketing money to get it to the next stage.
Right.
So all those sort of things it's a bit like you've got to start a fire, and then if it starts to go, you've got to find ways to put some more petrol on it.
Right. Yeah.
And it was a great example of that was working with Jake Bugg, to be honest, because Jake comes from, you not mind me saying, like a pretty rough background, and in a way shouldn't have had a chance. And the way that things are, and he did everything really old-fashioned. He learned how to play really well. He wrote a lot of songs. He banged on the door to get gigs in the local places in Nottingham, and then got noticed by somebody, and managed to get enough money to do a demo, and went to my friend Jason's studio to do a demo, and Jason called me up, and I called Universal up, and then all of a sudden we were at the races. But he was totally out of time with what was going on musically. It wasn't, he was playing guitar music for a start, and everybody and it was like very electronic music. It was popular at the time. So he's a great example of how dedication, persistence can get you somewhere. And also, you just kind of need to go with things. So one thing I always say with Jake is he's always taken every chance he's got. And I can't say that's true of everybody, because a lot of people are quite scared to make the leap of faith that you have to do. You're going to work with people you don't know. And they're saying, we think we're going to do this for you, and we're going to do that for you, and you're thinking, are you? And you start,
I've heard this before.
You're a bit nervous,
Yeah.
He took every chance he got, and and now he's been around the world several times. He's been around the world like 3 or 4 times now with his band, and he's having a great time.
Yeah. So do you think there's still value in the record deal, or does it really depend on the artist, for example?
I think it depends. I think it's like horses for courses, really. I think it depends on each. I don't think it suits every artist, and I think it depends what kind of ambition you have in the first place.
Yeah.
But I think it can, and I think this is where like good management comes into place, because like good management will be the buffer between the record company just trying to take as many shortcuts as the major record company, because they're competing like day in day out with and they're always looking to see what's successful now and trying to sort of mold you into something that you might not want to be. And so a good manager will be the buffer between that and keeping your kind of your artistic integrity intact, and knowing what you're prepared to do and what you're not prepared to do, and what you think is good and what you don't think is good, and as far as, and some people their artistic integrity is everything, and they will never compromise, and some people don't care and they just want to I just want to be successful, so you've got to kind of, there's a balance between all those sort of things, I guess. I personally lean towards like more artistic things and more credible things, and things that probably wouldn't naturally be that commercial. And I'm personally interested in artist development, so I'm interested in trying to get the best out of somebody and help them just be as good as they possibly could be. Now that might be that they'll sell out a world tour, and might be that they sell out a few gigs down a pub or something. It doesn't really matter that much to me, as long as you've helped them get to the
whatever it
the
is.
right place. Yeah.
This week is brought to you in partnership with MGR Music. Ever wanted to learn an instrument, hone your skills, or pick up something completely new? You can get so far by yourself, however, professional guidance can make all the difference. With a network of tutors right across the UK and rates starting from as little as £15 per hour, visit mgrmusic.com now to get started.
So here is Keith's good cause of the week.
Anything to do with mental health, especially with kids, and it's mental health week this week, so anything to do with that. We have a charity that, we run through Jake, called the Robin Hoodie Foundation.
Right. That's quite good,
and we take money from if we put money in tunes in commercials or anything like that, we make them pay money into the Robin Hoodie Foundation, and then we spend it on youth clubs and buying kids from youth clubs that wouldn't, in deprived areas, getting them instruments and stuff that they couldn't normally get. So I'm interested in anything that'll promote kids that wouldn't normally get a chance to play music, have an instrument, have a whatever. I'm really interested in anything that does that as well.
Brilliant.
Nice link to Jake Bugg there, and a good cause all around.
Yeah. And back to the episode. Well, that's I'm actually going to skip ahead and then skip back. One of the things that I noticed is like the maturing of a band or an artist.
Yeah.
You've just touched on it there. Because I remember I was interviewing Johnny Higgs for Everything last year, and Sam Fender was the first on the bill.
Yeah.
And this was like last May, and now Sam, his new album's out in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
He's just about to go over the top, isn't he?
Yeah.
That maturing of a band, I can probably guess that you're going to say is very important. But how does that look? What does it look like? What does it feel like in the real world? Or does it really depend on artist by artist?
Do you mean the amount of time it's had to develop?
Yeah, the amount of time it's had to develop. Or if you've got a band in that you can see, let's just say a new band that with the next guitar band came in, but were rough around the edges, that had a bad attitude maybe, or the song that had one or two songs, but you could see something in them. How long would you take to like nurture them and get more songs out of them, get good behaviours or whatever it might be? I mean, bad attitude can take you a long way, can't it?
Yeah. I was going to say, if it was a bad attitude, I'd just give them a load of booze and send them out.
Yeah. It's a bad example, that. You know what I mean?
We could do with a few more of those, to be honest.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I don't know, because like Sam's a good example of that kind of current career projection where he's self-published at first and put EPs out on his own and built a local following, and but also has a good manager, and the manager's been able to get him the right deal. And what they didn't do, and this is quite often the best way to do a record deal, but it's the few and far between, is if you just do the thing that you do and then wait for people to come to you. And they kind of did that by releasing their own material, and then eventually they got a following enough, and the current record company partners, their numbers were pretty high on Spotify and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And so the majors started to come and then try and persuade Sam and his manager that they could take him to the next level, which they have done. And the good thing about him was it's like it had time to develop. It did create a good strong local following. And I would imagine, I mean, I've only met Sam once, but I imagine it as personally, he feels like he's had a bit of chance to grow and the time to write, because you always get a long time to write your first songs.
Yeah.
And then once you start and it's successful and you're on the road and you're traveling and everything, then you don't get as much time to write as you used to. So hopefully for him, he feels like he's had enough development time to get all those songs in the bank and get his songwriting craft together before it catapults to fame, and he's gonna be really successful. But again, all those things are around him. I think I think he's got strong management. He's got to deal with Cobalt, so they're very strong in terms of nurturing artists and stuff, and he's got a deal with a record deal with Polydor, who we work with the Lighthouse Family, and they're very strong as well. And again, they're they've got a lot of great young people working for them. I know the guy that signed Sam Fender is just like one of the best young A&R guys around. He's really like, he's just very genuine kid. Comes from, he just comes from loving music and growing up in Leeds. So it's like, there's no massive science, and in some ways it's a lot of happy coincidences that the right people get involved at the right time, I think.
And sometimes quality always gets to the top.
Quality usually does get to the top, usually. I mean, I'd say somebody like, if we looked at all the way back to Prefab Sprout, Paddy'd been writing songs since he was 14, and we didn't make that first record until he was 26, I think. So that's a long time. He had a lot of songs,
12 people,
but they kept him in great stead, because after the first one we were making them pretty rapid succession. We were making an album a year pretty much, and he had all those songs stockpiled, and he was kind of ready to go, and he'd done a load of local gigs with Prefab Sprout before things started to take off.
So what happens then when you have that stockpile, but then the stockpile runs out and you're in the middle of the machine, like almost at your plateau, don't you? Then you've got to start again. What's the record company or the management company or whoever it might be to try and get that out of the person to say, look, we've run out now, you've got a couple, what's next?
I think it kind of comes from it always comes from the artists themselves, and it always comes from what they're feeling, and their desire. So we've kind of been through that a little bit with Jake, because we signed a deal with Universal for 4 albums, and he made the 4 albums, and he's been around the world several times, and the first album was number 1. It was like the youngest male solo artist to have a number 1 record ever, in the UK. So he was catapulted to a lot of success at a very quite immature age, really, and it had to catch up. And I think it must have been very hard at the age of 18. I mean, thankfully we were surrounded by great people, and he was always surrounded, by nurturing people at the record label, and Universal were great, and people that helped us at Cobalt were great, and then we had, so he was always looked after. But he did his 4 albums, and then it's kind of like, now we need to do the next thing. And for him, it was, whereas he'd come from writing songs about the council estate he was on and his experiences as a kid growing up, now his experiences are different, and he wants to write a different type of song. So he's been in Los Angeles working with loads of different producers, but getting kind of maturing as a songwriter, really. And we've done a new deal with Sony, and everything's fresh. And I say everything's fresh. The guy that signed him at Universal originally is now at Sony. So we sort of reunited with a lot of people that were part of his early success. But he's had a kind of fresh impetus, and I think a lot of that's come with just, he's actually grown up a bit as well. So now he's writing as a 24-year-old as opposed to a 16-year-old, and he's experienced a lot more. So I think his songwriting's more mature and more interesting as a result. And I think now he's actually writing the best songs he's ever written, but because he's had a chance to do all those things, it's like he's very lucky, to be honest.
Yeah, I suppose he's kind of matured through 4 albums.
So like in a classic way. I always think he's a bit like Bruce Springsteen. He was doing all those great sort of early records, and then he started doing then he did Born to Run, then he did Born US, then he did Nebraska, so he still was and people I was brought up with David Bowie and Roxy Music, things like that, so they all made loads of records, and they had loads of time to develop, and it wasn't frowned upon to do something different. David Bowie's every record was different to the last one, and that was to be, everybody was congratulating him on that at the time. Now there's a horrible sense of everything goes into one record, and people don't really get a chance to develop beyond. There's a lot of one-hit wonders again now. And that's just something to do with the system, I think, of how quick it is, and the kind of trying to grasp shorter attention spans a lot of the time.
Is that so? I was going to ask the question. You kind of answered it there. Was, do you think that whole the difficult second album is now, no, the difficult third album is now the difficult second album, which is now the difficult second single, as people describe it? Is that true for indie artists? Let's call them indie artists. Or is it kind of a myth that is only for your X Factor winners of this world, your big
I think
machine?
it's more for that, where somebody's being propelled to fame quite quickly, and but hasn't really got the depth of talent, and hasn't been doing it for the same kind of reasons. So it would stand to reason that it would be harder to last and the people around them aren't necessarily the nurturing people that you would want. So I don't really see those kind of like fame artists I don't see them as real artists, particularly personally. I just, I would much rather see somebody like Kanye West, who's like just, who over a ton of records has like stretched the boundaries and done a lot of different things, and been able to inspire loads of other people to do the same sort of thing. And he started with, he had to spend his own money to get started, and now and he's just determined. He's like a true artist. And somebody like Sam or Jake, they're the same thing to me. It's like people that have they're doing it because they're making music because they're musicians, and that's all they want to do.
Yeah.
There's a trend. There seems to be a bit of a trend for people that are musicians to have to be something more than that, to be like comedians on social media and all this kind of stuff. And I just think it personally. I think it kind of, it's a laugh when it works. It's always been a laugh when it works. The Goons were funny, weren't they? Billy Connolly was funny. He used to play music and tell jokes. Yeah. But I don't think it's very musical. It's like, you're not going to get Kanye West from that. You're not going to get Tupac from that. You're not going to get David Bowie from that. You're not going to get Sam Fender, Jake Bugg, or any of them from that. It's just like, so I still think that kind of long-term credibility is just like, I think it's really important that people are nurtured to be able to do that. Not everybody's going to make their best record when it's the first record.
Of course, yeah.
So,
one of the things I was going to mention actually that James was humming and hawing about was, I don't want to look back at how things have changed since the Prefab Sprout days or anything like that, because what's the point, I guess. But what has stayed the same? Because the way we record music, the way we find bands, the way we find artists has changed. But there must be some fundamental similarities from any song from the mid-80s to now that still stays the same, that artists can live up to.
I think in some ways, like, everything's changed. So the means of distribution have changed. It's easier to get. It's easier to self-publish. It's easier to distribute your music. It's easier to make a record. It's because you can make it on computer. You don't have to go into a recording studio. You don't have to save up to do it. You can make music. Everything's easier to do than it used to be. But fundamentally, everything's still the same, because you're writing a song that you want to touch somebody else with, and you want to move somebody else with, and you're making a recording of that music that in some way you're going to connect with another person. That hasn't changed, and that hasn't changed since music first started. So, or recordings first started. So you're still making a recording of something that you're trying to connect with other people with, and in a way that can make them dance, laugh, cry, whatever. So none of that's changed at all, really. I also think that there's always been the kind of, whether it was like single artists it seems like right now there's a lot of tendency for things to be quite like they used to be in the 60s, where you'd have single song artists, and like Tin Pan Alley and all that sort of stuff, rather than album artists. Right. And then in the 70s, album artists came around, Zeppelin, all these sort of people. So, and then rap changed everything, dance changed everything, right? But so I think now the thing that's different is it's much. All different genres of music are much more accessible, and they're all kind of working together. I mean, we're working. Jake's just done a record with a group called Camel Fat from Liverpool. It's a dance outfit, and they're brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Great musicians, and but nobody has that kind of concern about genres being kept apart that they used to. So that's changed. But being good within the genre, and being, whatever kind of genre you're working, you just have to be really good at it in order to touch somebody. It doesn't mean you have to be the best musician in the world, but you have to have done something. I I love the Velvet Underground. Probably some of the most awful sounding records ever at the time.
Yeah.
And you could say the same with a lot of dance music in the 90s. So it's amazing how pioneering that was when you listen to it now. But it's just done out of a kind of joie de vivre. And I always think a lot of music should be come from young people that aren't scared of any barriers and just want to just do what they want to do. They want to make music because they want to make music. They're too young to give a shit about, am I going to pay the bills? Is this going to happen? Is that going to... They don't care. They're just making music because they think it'll be exciting, or it'll move somebody, or something will happen, And that doesn't matter whether it's somebody making, if it's Sam Gigliotti making dance music in his bedroom in outside of Glasgow, or whether it's Lewis Capaldi belting his lungs out in the local pubs in Glasgow. It's like they're all young people excited about what they're doing, and making and making a connection with other people, and that's kind of so in a way nothing's changed.
So I normally ask, when I'm talking to people in bands, what song they wish they'd written, but I'm going to change it for yourself. Which song, out of all the songs that have ever been released, do you wish you'd released, either through your companies or in management?
God, that's the hardest question in the whole world.
I suppose there's two ways you can answer it. Is it an artist way, or do you want to release Wannabe, which will make you absolutely tons of money?
Oh no, it wouldn't be that. Well, if it was that, it would be it would be Off the Wall by Michael Jackson. But God, that is such a hard question. The first thing that sprung to mind was Sweet Jane by Velvet Underground, so I'll just go with that for now.
Okay. So obviously there must be a reason that you started Soul Kitchen. Who was the artist that got you excited about music and excited to venture into this world that's now been your career, I guess? That
thought I could do it in the first place? Well, the first artist that I really the first record I heard that I loved was by Sly and the Family Stone that my mum had. A song called Running Away by Sly and the Family Stone. That's the first record I remember really loving. And then after that, David Bowie was the thing that got me. And David Bowie led me to loads of things. So he led me to Brian Eno and Kraftwerk, electronic music. So that sort of started my education in music. I've always personally preferred black music. So Marvin Gaye is a massive hero of mine. Yeah. And I love hip hop. So I was brought up with hip hop in the early 80s and stuff. So and bought all the early hip hop records and all that. So I love Kanye West and people like that. So I've now rabbled on. I can't remember what the question was.
Which artist got you into music?
Oh, got into it, right? Yeah. I would say, probably David Bowie. But I would say that it was because I'm a punk rocker, so I would say the Sex Pistols probably were the thing that made me think I could do it.
You could do it.
If I hadn't read an interview with Malcolm McLaren around the time that happened, I don't think I would have ever thought I could make a record. It was punk rock that made me believe that I could make records and be in the music business. So
excellent. What was it? You answered this before. Actually, what was the first album you ever fell in love with?
First album I ever fell in love with was what was it? It was probably Ziggy Stardust.
Right.
Probably. Yeah.
Good answer. First gig you ever went to?
First gig I ever went to was I was a kid and I went to see Free at City Hall. Somebody took me to see Free at City Hall.
I think that's the answer for a lot of people around here, isn't it?
One of the best gigs I've ever been to in my life.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the last one, what's the best bit of everything that you do in this music industry, business?
The thing I like most about it is when you've enabled somebody to get the idea that was in their head onto, I mean, it used to be a record, but to make a recording that you've then released to the world and you can hear it and it feels like a record. I was always more interested in records and like than I was in live music, for instance.
Right.
So the biggest thrill is when it used to be when you opened the box and you got the first record out. Now it's like when you turn on Apple, Spotify, whatever it is, and it's there and for the first time, and you know that everybody else can hear it properly, and it's become a tangible thing rather than just your hopes and dreams. So that's the best thing.
Awesome. Keith, thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So yeah, it was great catching up with Keith because it really gave another view on the music industry and another voice of how record labels, record companies, publishing, all of that stuff, the business stuff works, but in a very open and honest way.
Yeah.
I know we've spoken.
At the end of the day, they've been the good record labels have been either around a while or have people who've been in the music business for a while. In theory, they'll know what they're talking about. If they say, well, actually, commercially, that song's likely to do better than that song for these reasons, then they've got more of an objective view rather than you as a very sort of, who'll be very emotionally attached to your songs, trying to make those decisions. No, but that's my best song. That's the one. Well, you might think it is, but however, when we release them, that's the one that's going to sell more, do well for these reasons.
And then more people will hear that song that you love.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think an example of that is so many people love Slide Away off Definitely Maybe. But I think if you had released that ahead of Supersonic or Live Forever, would it have been as successful? Possibly not. So yeah, that's a really good point of just
one of the many advantages to having a good set of people behind you.
And Keith's the sort of person who I believe he could really do the right thing, and he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a reason why the likes of Jake Bugg are with them.
Or the Lighthouse Family. Yeah,
indeed.
So next week's James, I am talking to a bare naked lady. Not literally. He has a snippet from next week's episode with Stephen Page.
Do a little bit of extra work and tune your own guitars. Change your own guitar strings.
Yeah.
But when I first started as a solo artist, I was like looking at my stuff thinking like, I know there was a time I used to do this.
All of the show notes for today's episode can be found at acpgmusic.com, along with our back catalogue of episodes. If you like what you hear, or perhaps have some improvements or specific guests you'd like us to consider, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at info@acpgmusic.com or hit us up on social media. Keep supporting upcoming artists, and we'll catch you next time.